Welcome to the deep dive. Stop for a moment and just consider the incredible untapped potential hidden within you. We're not just talking about physical ability, but something deeper. A profound connection, really, that exists between your body and your consciousness, maybe your spirit.
Yeah.
Today, we're diving deep into some powerful forces that, well, reside within all of us.
That's right. And this deep dive, it's all about exploring that fascinating, sometimes kind of mysterious connection between the pineal gland and Kundalini energy.
Exactly.
And our source material for this journey is this really remarkable interview with Dr. Alessio Barberi. He's a medical doctor, known for bridging science, inner transformation, and holistic health.
Right. Dr. Barberi, he offers a really unique perspective, one we're going to be unpacking today.
He really does. He shared some profound insights that, well, they definitely got us thinking.
Absolutely. So our mission here in this deep dive is to pull out the core knowledge from his perspective. We want you to understand what these energies are, how they've been linked to consciousness, to healing, and maybe what unlocking them might actually mean for you.
Okay, let's dive in then. So the core of this conversation, the topic Dr. Barberi calls the most important, is Kundalini.
Kundalini.
Yeah. And he really emphasizes, it's kind of a shame this isn't something we learn about in, school.
And when you hear what it is, you start to understand why maybe it isn't. He describes it as this natural internal energy. But where is it?
It's deep within the body. Specifically, he localizes it at the perineum, that area between the external genitals and the anus.
Okay.
And it's in contact there with the sacral chakra.
Got it. And this energy, it's not just sitting there.
Not at all. According to the source, it holds immense power, often repressed. But activating it, that can lead to what he calls grossi sconvolgimenti, which, translates to major upheavals in your life.
Major upheavals. Wow.
Yeah. Think of it like that. He uses this analogy. Imagine you realize you haven't been driving some basic utility car your whole life, but actually a high-performance vehicle like a Ferrari.
Okay.
You suddenly gain incredible power, but the insight here is you absolutely must learn how to handle it. Otherwise, things could get, chaotic.
That Ferrari analogy really hits home. You need that control. And he also makes this crucial link, doesn't he, between Kundalini and health.
Yes, a very direct link. True, perfect health, as he puts it, isn't just, not being sick or having good blood tests.
Right.
It fundamentally includes emotional health. And the state associated with activated Kundalini, according to this perspective, leads to this profound state of wellness, really strong resistance to illness, and potentially, living a long life where the body eventually just ages out naturally rather than, say, succumbing to disease.
Interesting. And the why behind that health connection?
It comes down to energy flow. Energy is constantly moving through your body via these channels, kind of like the meridians used in acupuncture.
Yeah, like pathways.
Exactly. And health, in this view, relies entirely on this energy flowing freely without obstruction.
But that flow, it doesn't always happen easily, does it? What stops it?
Well, the source points to two main culprits. First, physical problems, think trauma, illness, maybe surgery, scars, things like that.
Makes sense?
But the number one reason energy gets blocked, and this is the really significant insight here, is emotional problems.
Emotional.
Yeah. Unresolved emotions, stress, past trauma. These are seen as major dams in that energy river.
Wow. Okay, so that immediately makes you wonder, how does the body even perceive and interact with energy in this way? We learned about the five senses, right? Sight, hearing, taste.
Right, the standard five. And the source explains how those work. They translate external info, like photons for sight, sound waves, chemicals for taste and smell, pressure for touch into electrical currents.
Which the brain then interprets.
Exactly. It's all translation and interpretation. But, and this is where Dr. Barberi's perspective gets really interesting, he challenges the idea that those are our only senses. He presents acupuncture points, nearly 800 of them, as additional sense organs.
Wait, almost 800 more ways the body is sensing the world? That's kind of mind-bending.
Isn't it? So just like eyes receive light, these points are described as receiving constant electromagnetic waves from the environment.
Constantly.
The source mentions a staggering figure, something like 400 billion bits of information per second.
Whoa.
And the key insight is they don't just receive, they apparently resonate with specific frequencies, absorb that energy, and then convert it into electrical currents that travel along the meridians.
The meridians, those are the pathways you mentioned.
Exactly. He uses a great analogy. If acupuncture points are like small local sensors, the meridians are the expressways carrying that vital energy throughout the whole system.
Okay, local roads versus highways. Got it. And those acupuncture points themselves. He called them something else, too.
Yeah, he describes them as small energy vortices or little chakras.
Little chakras, which
Yeah.
naturally leads to the big ones, right? The major chakra.
Precisely. Certain points are so central, so significant, that they correspond to these huge energy centers. He lists the 7 main ones, starting from the base and moving up: sacral, hepatosplenic, solar or celiac cardiac, laryngeal, frontal, and finally, coronary.
7 major centers.
Yeah.
And these aren't just concepts, are they? They're described more physically.
Very much so. They're described almost like powerful funnels or trombe-d'aria, the Italian for waterspouts or mini tornadoes,
Wow.
capturing electromagnetic information and energy and pulling it forcefully into the body. And there's a physical connection. These chakras link directly to our nerve plexuses and endocrine glands.
So they're controlling organs and bodily functions.
Essentially, yes. They act as central processing hubs for both energy and information in the body.
Okay, this is deep. What's particularly fascinating is how Dr. Barberi then frames the entire chakra system.
Yeah, he calls it a map of our lives, like an energetic blueprint outlining the path of evolution, the path one should ideally follow.
So moving up through the chakras isn't just about energy. It's a metaphor for life's journey, for expanding consciousness.
Exactly. Each chakra represents a stage.
Mm.
The sacral, down at the base, that's about material existence. Think of a baby focused on survival, basic needs.
Right.
Then you move up to the hepatosplenic, linked to reproduction, sexuality, often associated with the explorations and, let's be honest, challenges of adolescence.
Definitely challenges there. And then
The solar chakra, around the stomach area, this represents personal power, realization, finding your center. It's that stage in adulthood, ideally, where you find your purpose, your place, your contribution, whether that's, being an amazing chef or a skilled carpenter, finding that core sense of self.
okay, purpose and power. What's next?
Once that sense of self is sort of realized, the energy can move higher to the cardiac chakra, the heart center. Unconditional love, compassion.
Beautiful.
And from that place of love and having found your realization, you move to the laryngeal chakra, the throat. This is about communication, creativity.
Sharing your truth.
Exactly. Sharing that inner realization, that love with the world, expressing yourself through art, speaking, writing, whatever your medium is.
Okay, getting higher now.
Next is the frontal chakra, often called the third eye, linked to the pituitary gland. This is associated with expanded perception, intuition, accessing information beyond the usual 5 senses.
This is sensory stuff.
And finally, the summit. The coronary chakra, right at the crown of the head. This one's intimately linked to the pineal gland.
The pineal gland connection.
Yes. This represents transcendence, pure energy, connection to the soul, to higher dimensions. It's the ultimate goal on this map.
But it's a progression, right? You can't just jump to the top.
No, the source is clear on this.
Yeah.
You have to pass through the lower chakras. He uses the phrase pasar l'exam, like passing an exam at each level.
Because you need to resolve the challenges and lessons of each stage.
That's the idea. Before the energy can truly ascend to the higher ones, energy moves up this pathway, not down.
And there's something about frequency, too, isn't there?
Yes, he mentions an increasing vibrational frequency as you move up through the chakras. It's loosely linked to patterns we see in nature, like the Fibonacci sequence or the golden spiral.
So life's journey, seen this way, is about raising your vibration.
Fundamentally, yes. It's about increasing your personal vibrational frequency. And what really stands out is the contrast he draws.
What's that?
Well, the ideal journey ends in that coronary chakra state, deeply connected, spiritual. But he points out, kind of tragically, that someone could live to be 100 years old and still be energetically stuck way down in the lower chakras, maybe fixated only on material wealth, which is sacral level stuff, or stuck in old power struggles from the solar plexus level.
So the map is there, but you have to consciously choose to follow it.
Exactly. It requires conscious effort and clearing those blockages.
Okay, so if this is the map, how does the Kundalini energy actually start moving? How does it begin this ascent?
The source talks about several triggers. Sexual orgasm is mentioned as one significant way energy is released.
Okay, are there others?
Yes. He notes other methods can facilitate it too. Deep meditation, but he cautions that requires real expertise.
Right.
Then there are specific practices like Tantra and Kundalini Yoga, and significantly sexual intercourse, but specifically with someone you genuinely love. That emotional connection is seen as vital.
The love aspect is key.
Seems so. And he also highlights a very specific technique, the Ioni massage. He describes its power using some pretty intense analogies.
Like what?
Bomba atomica, atomic bomb, lampada di Aladino, Aladdin's lamp, even Drago Shendron, like the wish-granting dragon from Dragon Ball Z.
Wow, okay, so clearly very powerful in his view. And as this energy rises, how does it travel? You mentioned channels.
Yes, primarily through three main channels he discusses. There's Sushumna, the central channel, which is derived from the main front and back meridians we use in acupuncture, the Renmai and Dumai.
Okay, the central highway.
Pretty much. And then flanking it are Ida and Pingala, often seen as the feminine and masculine channels. They spiral up the Sushumna, crossing over at each chakra point.
Spiraling channels? Cool. And as the Kundalini moves up these channels, it hits the chakras.
Right, and it encounters those chakras, which he vividly describes using another great word, kaseli.
Yeah.
Like toll booths on a highway.
Toll booths. I like that. So you have to pay the toll.
Or rather, pass an exam at each toll booth before the energy can proceed to the next level. You have to have dealt with the themes of that chakra.
Okay. And this is where the source brings in a really crucial insight about gender differences, particularly focusing on women.
Yes, this is a major point in the interview. Dr. Barberi highlights how the widespread, often historical suppression of female sexuality,
How so?
through societal guilt, prejudice, cultural conditioning, how all of that acts as a tremendous emotional block for many women.
A block to this energy flow.
Exactly. This repression is seen as a primary reason why Kundalini energy often gets stopped at the lower chakras for women, particularly the sacral and hepatosplenic centers.
The ones related to sexuality and basic grounding.
Right. He links blockages here to things like unresolved anger, menstrual problems, difficulty expressing healthy sexuality. It can also get stuck at the solar plexus, impacting self-worth and personal power.
And the implication is?
Well, the powerful, maybe controversial point made in the source is that this suppression is viewed almost as a historical mechanism of control. By blocking women's Kundalini energy from rising easily, it prevents them from accessing their full potential power.
That's a really heavy thought. Profound perspective to consider. So for the energy to reach the higher chakras, women in particular might need to overcome these specific emotional and societal blocks.
That's the essence of it. Passing those lower chakra exams is essential, and he suggests that when the energy does break through, it can even be amplified as it moves up through those newly cleared pathways.
Amplified power.
Okay.
Which brings us, finally, to the summit. What happens when this potent, maybe amplified energy reaches the highest level, the coronary chakra?
It arrives at the doorstep of the pineal gland, or the epiphysis, the technical term.
The pineal gland. The seat of the soul, some call it.
Indeed. And the source describes a powerful discharge of energy right at the pineal gland when Kundalini arrives forcefully, especially if the energy has been unified, coming up through Sushumna, Ada, and Pingala all together.
A discharge of energy, what does that feel like?
Well, he explains this intense energetic event can cause an ultra-dimensional sensation, and interestingly, even a temporary loss of consciousness.
Loss of consciousness, that sounds intense.
It does. He compares some of the effects, the altered states perhaps, to those experienced with certain psychedelic substances like ayahuasca.
But he makes a distinction, right?
A crucial one. He stresses this is a completely natural process. It's powered entirely by the body's own internal energy system, not an external substance.
Okay, natural but powerful. So what's the pineal gland actually doing in all this? We know it produces melatonin for sleep.
Right, but the source states that when Kundalini is activated, the pineal gland also produces another compound called pinealine.
Pinealine, derived from melatonin.
Yes. And he highlights something really fascinating about the pineal's physical structure, too. It apparently contains piezoelectric crystals.
Piezoelectric. Like quartz, meaning they generate electricity under pressure.
Exactly. Or they vibrate when exposed to electricity. This basically makes the pineal gland a powerful amplifier of energy within the body. He also describes it as receiving vital energy, or prana, directly from the cosmos, like a little antenna.
An antenna and an amplifier, wow.
Yeah.
And this pinealine chemical, what does it enable?
According to the source, pinealine is key to experiencing time differently, non-linearly. He describes it almost like a figure-8 shape.
So seeing the future or the past.
That's the implication, accessing time beyond the linear sequence we usually perceive. This is where he links what he calls extrasensorial powers like foresight, deep intuition to this activated pineal state.
Okay, and the temporary loss of consciousness you mentioned, it's not just passing out,
No, it's seen as something purposeful, a kind of system reboot.
like turning a computer off and on again.
Exactly his analogy. Spegnere e reaccendere. He uses it when a system isn't functioning correctly, you reset it.
So the Kundalini reaching the pineal forces a reset.
That's the idea. And upon regaining consciousness, he uses this beautiful Brazilian Portuguese word, acordar-se. It means to tune or to awaken by tuning.
Tuning, like an instrument.
Precisely. It's like the whole system has been reset and perfectly optimized, tuned. The insight is that after this reboot, the body is described as being perfectly functioning, the emotional system is balanced, and the individual is fully tuned and ready.
That sounds incredible. Which leads us to the state of someone who has actually achieved this activated Kundalini state, as described in the source.
Yes, he summarizes the benefits. And notably, he specifically states that in this state, a woman becomes nettamente superiore, which translates to distinctly, clearly superior to a man in the same activated state.
Interesting distinction. And what characterizes this state generally?
Perfect emotional balance is one key thing. Also, an almost total non-susceptibility to illness. He uses terms that suggest a kind of energetic invincibility.
Wow.
Such a person is described as radiating this positive energy that's just undeniable, and they become capable of performing their life role, whatever it might be. He stresses it doesn't matter if you're a fruit vendor or a CEO, you do it at the top, with perfect execution, presence, and effectiveness.
Fully actualized, you could say.
That's a good way to put it. And he ties it back again, just briefly, to the physical pathways, reminding us how these main chakras connect to those autostrade, the main meridians like Renmai and Dumai. He mentions specific points, but the core idea is these aren't just abstract concepts, they are linked to the body's actual energetic infrastructure.
Okay, so this is all incredibly fascinating, potentially life-changing stuff. If someone listening is intrigued and wants to understand more, or maybe even explore this path, what are the practical steps mentioned in the source for potentially activating this energy?
Well, first, he emphasizes the need for a deep understanding of the anatomy involved, the energy channels, the points. He notes it requires significant study, more than we can cover here, obviously.
Right, self-education is key. What else?
Second, consistent practice of yoga. He specifically mentions Tantra and Kundalini yoga styles as being designed for this kind of work.
Makes sense. Yoga and energy work often go hand in hand.
Third, he brings up that Ioni massage technique again. He gives a bit more detail on its structure, usually 2 hours focused on specific acupuncture points across the whole body, followed by 1 hour of specific vaginal massage techniques. He reiterates its incredible power, the atomic bomb potential, but also clarifies he doesn't personally perform it on others, though he could potentially teach the method. He also highlights the importance of points on the feet, specifically those linked to the spleen, liver, and kidney meridians in this process.
Okay, a very specific and intensive technique.
Oh.
Anything else?
He does mention autoerotism as a method, but notes it's generally less potent compared to practices involving a deep, loving connection with another person. It lacks that crucial yang emotional component, he says, which provides significant energetic force for the ascent.
The shared energy, the emotional charge, makes a difference.
That's the perspective. And the source also tackles some common questions people might have, like, are there dangers involved in activating Kundalini?
Yeah, that's a big one. Loss of consciousness, major upheavals. Sounds risky.
Interestingly, he says there are no physical dangers inherent in the process itself. However, he warns of a real possibility of social upheaval.
Social upheaval? How so?
Because your entire vibration, your energy changes so dramatically, you might find that your existing life, your social circles, your work environment, maybe even family dynamics are no longer resonant. They don't fit anymore.
So the danger is outgrowing your old life.
Exactly. He frames it not as a physical risk, but as the inherent danger or disruption that comes with profound personal growth and transformation. Things inevitably shift.
That's a really important way to frame it. What about going backwards? Can you descend after the energy has risen?
He clarifies that energy doesn't really go backward in this system. Blockages stop its ascent. If you reach, say, the heart chakra, but then stop your practices or encounter new blocks, you might feel like you've dropped energetically, but you wouldn't typically fall all the way back to zero. It's seen primarily as a one-way ascent, although ongoing practice and maintenance are definitely beneficial.
Okay, so it's more about getting stuck than falling all the way down.
Mm.
And if activation is somehow lost or diminished, can it be recovered?
Yes, he says it can, and strong intention is absolutely key here. He calls it 30% of the work. Just the sheer desire, the focused will to reactivate this energy and resume the ascent is considered a crucial first step.
Intention matters. And beyond these major activation techniques, did he mention simpler ways to work with this energy system?
Yes, definitely. He talked about other ways to stimulate acupuncture points that are much more accessible for everyday life. Things like general massage, shiatsu, moxibustion, using heat, or even just applying simple pressure.
Like acupressure?
Exactly. He gave that practical example of pressing point pericardium 6 on the wrist, about 3 finger widths up from the wrist crease, between the tendons to relieve nausea or hiccups.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Right. And he notes that simply massaging the whole body naturally stimulates countless points. The skin itself is piezoelectric, he says, acting as an amplifier. And importantly, the intention of the person giving the massage matters.
The energy behind the touch.
He even encourages you, the listener, to practice massaging loved ones. It's a way to share positive energy and stimulate these points.
That's a lovely practical takeaway. Did he hint at any other related topics?
Just briefly, he mentioned concepts like the Christ oil, related to secretions in the brain and spine, and also different styles of Japanese acupuncture, suggesting there's always more depth to explore.
Always more layers. Okay, let's try to quickly recap the essence of what we've covered in this deep dive. We've explored Kundalini as this powerful internal energy source sitting at the base of the body. We've seen how this energy is meant to flow through pathways, the meridians, and connect to the body's major energy hubs, the chakras.
Right, and how those chakras are presented almost as a map for life's journey, a path toward higher consciousness and evolution.
And we discussed how overcoming blocks, especially deep-seated emotional ones, potentially linked to societal conditioning, particularly for women, is vital for this energy to ascend.
And that ascent culminates at the pineal gland, an organ described as being linked to expanded perception, nonlinear time, and transcendence.
The whole system, when activated and flowing, is described as leading to this state of profound well-being, emotional balance, resilience, and potential.
It's definitely a complex, multi-layered perspective we got from Dr. Barberi's interview. Hopefully we've managed to distill some of the most impactful insights for you.
Absolutely. And it really makes you think, considering this idea of hidden internal energy, it's described potential power and the ways it might be blocked emotionally, maybe even societally. What does that make you, listening now, consider about your own energy, your own potential?
It's a deep question. And this conversation, this deep dive, it's really just scratching the surface, isn't it?
For sure. For anyone who wants to explore this further and learn directly from Dr. Barberi, he did mention his YouTube channel. It's called Spostare la Montagna di Alessio Barberi,
which translates to Moving Mountains with Alessio Barberi. He said it's a fantastic resource with many videos expanding on these ideas. He even talked about potentially developing a book or specific courses on Kundalini activation in the future, just underlining how much there is to this subject.
Definitely worth checking out if this resonated.
And maybe, just maybe, a final provocative thought to leave you with, something that came up in the source material. Imagine a world where this internal energy, this Kundalini, was widely understood, maybe even actively cultivated by many individuals. Dr. Barberi suggests that in such a society, non esisterebbero guerre, non esisterebbero litigi.
No wars, no arguments.
Yeah. It really leaves you reflecting, doesn't it? On the immense individual and maybe even collective implications if this inner power were more widely realized. What could that world look like?